Imagine you're a detective tasked with solving a complex crime. Would you rely on your deductive reasoning and logical analysis of the evidence to crack a case? Or would you trust your intuition and experience to guide you to the truth? This classic philosophical dilemma of rationalism versus empiricism has puzzled scholars for centuries and continues to shape our understanding of knowledge and reality today. In this presentation, we'll delve into the fascinating debate between rationalists and empiricists, exploring their different views of the nature of knowledge, the role of reason and experience, and the limits of human understanding. So strap in and get ready for a philosophical adventure through the maze of rationalism and empiricism.
Well, it has been a long time debate where man acquire his knowledge, either through his senses or by formal sciences through scientific data gathering.
Today, we'll be discussing two types of knowledge, theories under it, and some significant people's credence in them.
All theories of knowledge from the ancient time down to the present must provide an answer to the three central issues. The first one is, what is the source or sources of knowledge? The second is, given the source, what can be known? And lastly, how do we validate our knowledge claims? So when we attempt to compare and contrast these two major traditions, the rationalism and empiricism, the best way to do so would be in the terms of these three central issues in epistemology.
It was Immanuel Kant who synthesized the two major traditions in modern philosophy, namely rationalism and empiricism. Starting with rationalism, represented by René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Taking into consideration how a rationalist bears answers in the three issues of epistemology, a rationalist affirms that reason is the only source of knowledge, whereas the type of knowledge assured by this is formal knowledge found in formal sciences.
The only theory that rationalists accept is the coherence theory of truth. Besides, they believe that the five senses are not a genuine source of knowledge. Thus, knowledge claims by these five senses are described as unreliable and oftentimes even contradictory. They would support their criticism by giving examples of perceptual illusions. And the classic examples are a tower appears shorter from a distance and would appear taller when you are near it. Or a pencil submerged in waters appear bent, but in fact it is not. Or the mountain that looks blue at some distance, but it's not. And the railroad track which appears to converge at a distance, but in reality is parallel.
From such examples of perpetual illusions, the rationalist concludes that the five senses cannot give rise to genuine knowledge because knowledge derived from experience is unstable, unreliable, worse, even contradictory. However, a conscious is how knowledge derived from reason gave rise to the formal sciences like algebra, geometry, mathematics, and logic. This seems provided the model for certain knowledge using coherence theory of truth. At the same time, rationalists from the time of Plato to the present time consider this formal science to be a model for the theory of knowledge.
So focusing now on empiricism, and some of the people that supported this idea are John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume. They do not deny that reason is a genuine source of knowledge, but still, they emphasizes the use of the five senses, no matter of how unreliable or defective they are. Because these five senses are the only faculty that we have that can come contact with the physical world. And this physical world is actually revealed with the images that we can see, the objects that we can touch, the odors that we can smell, the flavor that we can taste, and the sounds that we can hear. They believe that if we have knowledge through the physical world, we have to use the five senses.
Hume, on the other hand, accepted not only sensations, but also passions and emotions as genuine impressions giving rise to genuine ideas. To quote, all perceptions of the human mind resolve themselves into two kinds, which I shall call impressions and ideas. The difference betwixt these consists in the degrees of force and liveliness, which they strike upon the mind and make their way into our thought or consciousness. These perceptions, which enter with most force and violence, we may call impressions, and under the name I comprehend all our sensation, passions, and emotions as they make their first appearance in the soul. By idea, I mean faint images of this in thinking and reasoning, that all our simple ideas in their first appearance are derived from simple impressions which correspond to them and which they exactly represent. Well, to explain this, Hume argues that all our perceptions can be divided into two categories: impressions and ideas. Impressions are more vivid and immediate experiences that we have, such as senses and emotions. Ideas, on the other hand, are less vivid and are derived from our impressions. Hume believes that all of our ideas are ultimately derived from our impressions, meaning that our concepts and understanding of the world are based on our sensory expressions.
The logical positivists, who were actually influenced by Hume, believe that statements and ideas originated from emotions and passions were meaningless and therefore unimportant. They only recognize and emphasize two things as valid objects of human reasons, and these are a relation of ideas and matters of fact. All objects of human reasons or inquiry may naturally be divided into two kinds, to wit, relations of ideas and matters of fact. Of the first kind are the sciences of geometry, algebra, and arithmetic, and in short, every affirmation which is either intuitively or demonstratively certain, that the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the square of two sides, that 3 times 5 is equal to the half of 30. Matters of facts which are the second objects of human reasons are not ascertained in the same manner, nor our evidence of their truth. However, of a like nature with the foregoing, the contrary of every matter of fact is still possible, because it can never imply a contradiction and is conceived by the mind with the same facility and distinctiveness, as if ever so conformable to reality. That the sun will not rise tomorrow is no less intangible a proposition and implies no more contradictions than the affirmation that it will rise. To explain, Hume's point is that our knowledge of the world is only limited to the matters of facts. While we can reason about the relations of ideas with certainty, we cannot know anything about the world with the same level of certainty. He argues that our beliefs about the matters of facts are based on habits and customs rather than reasons or necessity, and that we should be cautious in drawing conclusions based on limited observations and experiences. To emphasize, the empiricists disagree with rationalists that the faculty of reasons can guarantee empirical knowledge, and that this knowledge does not require the verifications of the 5 faculty of senses, because the faculty of reasons for them can guarantee only formal knowledge, and this type of knowledge has no empirical evidence.
And now we have the dogma, which is the dogma that there are only two sides of knowledge points perpetuated in the 20th century by the logical positivists. And the two types of knowledge claims being referred to are the truth of reason and truth of facts, which have an important use in the study of philosophical analysis. And while the distinction remains controversial in philosophy, the distinction is still useful and still honored in the classification of sciences today, either in formal and empirical sciences.
In today's time, the relation of ideas' most common synonyms are matters of logic, analytic, formal, and priori. And these terms are actually used to formal knowledge claims. On the other hand, matters of facts' most common synonyms are synthetic, empirical, or a posteriori, whereas these terms are used to refer to empirical knowledge claims.
As stated, in order to avoid ambiguity, adapt the convention of using analytic statements to represent the two types of knowledge claims. The distinction demarcated by Hume that the denial of analytic statements would entail contradiction, whereas the denial of empirical statements is still possible and will not imply a contradiction, remains a crucial characteristic that differentiates the two types of knowledge claims. While to further elaborate this, in philosophy, knowledge claims can be broadly divided into two types: analytic and empirical. Analytic statements are those that are true by definition, such as all bachelors are unmarried. In contrast, empirical statements are those that are based on observation or experience, such as the sky is blue. However, sometimes there can be ambiguity in distinguishing between these two types of statements. For example, the statement all swans are white might initially seem like an analytic statement, but it is actually an empirical statement that was proven false when black swans were discovered in Australia. To avoid such ambiguity, the convention of using analytic statements to represent the two types of knowledge claims can be adopted. This means that statements that are clearly true by definition, like all squares have four sides, will be used to represent analytic knowledge claims, while statements that are based on empirical observation, like water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level, will be used to represent empirical knowledge claims. Therefore, the convention of using analytic statements to represent analytic knowledge claims and empirical statements to represent empirical knowledge claims can help to avoid ambiguity and clarify the nature of the two types of knowledge claims.
As a summary, we can simply look at it as, for rationalists, reason is the only source of knowledge that they accept. They will only embrace formal knowledge found in formal sciences, such as geometry and logic, so as they also accept only one theory of truth, and this is the coherence theory of truth. On the other side, the empiricists have two sources of knowledge, and these are reasons and experience. They also accept two types of knowledge, and these are analytic and empirical. They also accept two theories of truths, and these are correspondence and coherence. So, that's all. Thank you for listening.